G'day guys, how's it going? My name is AussieTash. This video was suggested to me by one of my members on Discord. Thanks Nightwolf. Before we get into it, please make sure to jump on, hit that subscribe button. That would really help me out. Or join me on Discord. You'll find the link in the description down below. Okay, let's get into it. Canadians changed when they hear the word war.
Sorry, not sorry. While Canadians are nowadays subject to the stereotype of hockey-loving, maple syrup-chugging, overly polite potheads, their wartime stereotypes in the First and Second World Wars had their enemies trembling in their boots and making a hot mess in their trousers. It's as if, when the Canadians hear the word war, their insatiable desire for maple syrup and Canadian beer turns into an insatiable desire for blood. In saying that, however, they didn't always rush enemy positions with bayonets, meat cleavers, and spiked clubs, but were some of the most well-trained and formidable soldiers on any front in any war. In this video, we're going to explore Canadian wartime reputation, keeping our scope focused on World War II and the heroic feats of individual Canadian soldiers therein. To get the puck sliding, let's move our scope quickly to the First World War, in which the Canadians laid the groundwork for their reputation as shock troopers. Mostly, the troops of the Canadian Corps were known for their savage raids on enemy trenches and their unwritten take no prisoner and kill the wounded policies. Locked in a stalemate in opposing trenches, the Canadians devised all manner of strategies and weaponry to flip the chessboard upside down and clean up the enemy pieces. Cutting through barbed wire, they crept upon them in the cover of night with painted faces, launching either savage, unforeshadowed raids, or perking up their ears and eavesdropping on enemy plans. In said raids, the Canadians gorged their bayonets with blood and made good use of improvised melee weapons, paying little attention to attempts at surrender and skewering bandaged and unarmed men just the same as men on their feet with rifles. They even concocted an alchemist's shelf of homebrew explosives, like pipe bombs and jam jars loaded with nails and gunpowder. I think it's a safe bet to say that at least one grenade is made with a maple syrup jar. There are also tales of Canadian troops using temporary truces, like on Christmas Day, as a chance to catch their enemy with his stockings on, sending him grenades instead of Christmas ham, and bullets through the brain instead of season's greetings.
It's war. It's a nasty, horrible, scary word, but it's war. Do they think that countries and our soldiers are going to be friendly? That's not how war works. Guys, leave a comment. Tell me what you think about this video so far. Obviously, there's a lot to learn. I have learned a little bit about the history of Canada in the war, especially of 1812. There was a lot going on there with the French and with the English and with the Americans. So Canada, they have had their fair share of war. So has it made them tougher? Are their soldiers tougher? Are they fierce? If they're fighting for their country, that's it. It's all or nothing.
Now, it could be argued that Canadians were acting out of vengeance, but couldn't that argument be used to justify most atrocities in most wars? Canadian Lieutenant R.C. Germain's letter home to his parents makes the revenge excuse about as clear as the sap from a freshly tapped maple tree. After losing half of my company there, we rushed them, and they had the nerve to throw up their hands and cry camarade. All the camarade they got was a foot of cold steel, while I blew their brains out with my revolver. Despite being a little stab-happy with enemy soldiers, Canadian troops were known for being quite, as we contemporary folk have come to expect, polite to civilian populations. Before we have a look at Canadian reputation in World War II and some of its stories, it might pay to know about Canada's involvement in the war. Canada waited until the 10th of September 1939 to declare war in Germany because it didn't want to follow Britain like a Commonwealth sheep. It took Canada until the 11th of June 1940 to declare war on Italy and the 7th of December 1941 to declare it on Japan.
The 7th of December 1941. Was Pearl Harbor on that day or before that day? I'm pretty sure. I'm thinking Pearl Harbor was the 5th or the 6th of December 1941. Let me know. That would make sense because America obviously didn't get involved in World War II until after Pearl Harbor. And you know what? Canada, yes, they're part of the Commonwealth. They still are, they were back then. But they didn't want to be the English sheep, so they wanted to wait. They were far, far away. This war, that was happening in Germany. Had nothing to do with Canada. They were a continent away, way heaps far away. So for them just to stay away was probably a good choice, but things started to get real messy during World War II, didn't they? Well, things get messy with all wars, don't they? I like learning about World War II history. Leave a comment, leave a suggestion of some videos that I can watch in regards to the Canadian involvement in World War II so we can watch and learn together.
Overall, about 10% of Canada's population fought for her and the Allies. This amounted to around 1,100,000 Canadians serving in the Canadian Army, the Royal Canadian Navy, and the Royal Canadian Air Force. Of this 1,100,000, the majority were volunteers. Canadians fought in almost every theatre of World War II, notably in the defence of the United Kingdom, the Battle of Hong Kong, the Dieppe Raid, the invasions of Sicily and Italy, the Normandy landings and the liberation of France, and the liberation of Belgium and the Netherlands. The Canadian Navy escorted Allied ships across the Atlantic and maintained a high presence in the Pacific Ocean, and pilots from the Canadian Air Force flew under the wing of the British Royal Air Force. German submarines sunk Canadian naval and merchant vessels in the water of Canada and Newfoundland and attacked the loading pier at Bell Island. And the Japanese also attacked a lighthouse on Vancouver Island, though little else occurred in Canadian waters or on mainland Canada. Of the military operations in which Canadians were involved, their ferocity and inventiveness stood out in the Battle of Ortona, the Normandy landings, and the liberation of Belgium and the Netherlands. Through the medieval streets of Ortona, Italy, the Canadians and Germans engaged in brutal room-to-room, hand-to-hand fighting, with the Germans eventually having to withdraw. Here, the Canadians coined the tactic mouse holding, which is basically blowing holes in buildings to allow the passage of infantry rather than running into enemy bullets in the open. In the D-Day landings, the Canadians landed on Juno Beach, the second most resisted beachhead besides Omaha. The Canadians penetrated further inland than anyone else, coming up against some of the strongest units in the German military.
Wow, the Canadian Army during World War II, they were badass, eh? They really were. Not only did they take on the Germans in some parts, but they made them escape. They made them run away. That's really, really cool. Like I said, I don't know a lot about the involvement that Canada had in World War II, but I'm learning some really cool stuff here. Canada, you must have a badass army.
In Belgium and the Netherlands, the Canadians spent thousands and thousands of Canadian lives to drive the Germans back and get food to the starving civilian populations. They even shared rations with civilians and gave them blankets. Some of the most intense combat here was in the Battle of Scheldt, where the Allies fought through flooded terrain against stiff German defences for about a month. This battle alone cost the Canadians more than 6,000 casualties. This latter triumph, particularly the part about getting food to the starving civilians, is certainly keeping with Canadian tendencies in the First World War, though the following atrocity paints a bit of a different picture.
Okay, so even in war, Canadians are friendly. They died to get food to innocent people. They lost, 6,000 lives, 6,000 soldiers died to try and get food and supplies to innocent people. They shared their rations. Even in war, the scariest, darkest of times, Canadians are still friendly. They still have that beautiful, beautiful mentality that I've learned to love.
Canadian Lieutenant Colonel Frederick E. Wiggle was shot dead on approach to the town of Friseute, Germany, and a rumor spread that it was a civilian sniper from that town who shot him. Back on that revenge train, the Canadians burnt down the entire town, apparently moving its citizens onward before setting their homes on fire. It was discovered later that Wiggle was shot by German soldiers. Now, the intent of emphasizing Canadian brutality in World War I and mentioning the Friseute incident is not to take away from Canadian bravery in either world conflict. Like I said before, Canadians were some of the most well-trained and formidable soldiers on any front in any war, And I think the best way to communicate that is to share some stories involving some of the most heroic Canadian soldiers in World War II. On the 14th of December 1943, Canadian Captain Paul Triquet and his company, supported by an armoured squadron, tried to cross the gully and take the Casa Berardi, a hamlet on the Orto Orsona lateral, Italy. Under heavy machine gun and mortar fire, Triquet ran around organising and inspiring what remained of his men, saying, "There are enemy in front of us, behind us, and on our flanks. There is only one safe place. That is on the objective," before charging forward and breaking through the enemy line. Triquet's company and the supporting tank squadron pushed right up to the edge of Casa Berardi, where he set up defenses and fought off a tank-supported German counterattack with whatever weapons he could find. He held the defensive parameter against superior numbers until the rest of the battalion came in and relieved the company. Triquet's utter disregard of danger, his cheerfulness and tireless devotion inspired his men, and his tactical skill and leadership facilitated the capture at a vital point on the Ortona Rossona lateral. On the 18th of August 1944, Canadian Major David Vivian Currie was in command of a force of tanks, self-propelled anti-tank guns and infantry. His task was to block an escape route from the Falaise pocket in the village of Solember-sur-Divers, Normandy. Currie went in alone to scout German defences and to free the crew of 2 Allied tanks which were previously disabled. Under heavy mortar fire, he succeeded. The Germans then kept throwing counterattacks at Currie and his men until, on the 20th, one final German counterattack was thwarted by Currie, costing the Germans some 2,900 casualties.
Oh my gosh! Canada! You've taken on the Germans so many times during World War II. You went in there. A lot of those places were occupied by German soldiers everywhere. But still, you went in there and you took them out. You stopped them. You brave buggers. I had no idea about how ferocious and fierce and what an impact Canada had on World War II. This is incredible. Absolutely had no idea. Guys, be so proud of the history that you had during World War II. Your soldiers did you so proud.
Throughout these 3 days of intense combat, Currie displayed gallant conduct and a contempt of danger and collected and inspired his men. One of his officers said, "We knew at one stage that it was going to be a fight to the finish, but he was so cool about it, it was impossible for us to get excited." Over the 3 days, Currie barely got an hour's sleep, and when it was over, he fell asleep standing and then crashed to the ground. Currie's courage and devotion to duty had a far-reaching effect on the successful outcome of the battle. French-Canadian Corporal Leo Major was also in Normandy, where he captured a German armoured vehicle which held secret codes and lost an eye to a phosphorus grenade. He stayed in service, saying that he looked like a pirate. However, it wasn't in Normandy where Leo earned his first Distinguished Conduct Medal, but in the Netherlands in 1945. Actually, before we go there, Leo single-handedly captured 93 Germans in the Battle of Scheldt. When out on a solo reconnaissance mission in 1944, he escorted all 93 of them back to his camp, where he would not accept a DCM because he considered the person awarding it to him to be incompetent. Back to 1945 and the real DCM. After breaking his back, ribs, and both ankles when the car he was in was hit by a landmine, Leo went on a recon mission with a friend in the city of Zwolle. His friend was killed, so Major continued alone, capturing a German soldier, making the soldier take him to his officer, who was in a bar, and then telling that German officer that the Canadian artillery was going to shell and kill them all. Leo then ran through the city, firing his gun and lobbing grenades, fooling the Germans into thinking the Canadian army was invading. All through the night, Major brought captured German troops back to his camp, resting in civilian houses whenever he needed to catch his breath.
Leave a comment. Do you learn about these cool soldiers at school? Do you learn about the history of what Canada did during World War II and the influence they had? And how do you commemorate these days? We have Anzac Day, which is the 25th of April. That's the day World War One that the Australian soldiers landed in Turkey, Gallipoli. Didn't go too well for Australia on that day. We also celebrate Remembrance Day, which is the 11th of November at 11 a.m. and we stop and we remember all the soldiers that have lost and fought in every single war. I'm pretty sure Canada does the same on Remembrance Day. Please leave a message and let me know. Oh God. Canada, you killed it in World War II. Think the stories of those three soldiers and what they did with their companies? Absolutely insane. They took on the Germans, they scared them away, they captured them, they fed innocent German civilians rations of their food. Soldiers lost their lives to get food to innocent German civilians. I really had no idea about the impact that Canada had on the history of World War II. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. I would love to learn more about the influence that Canada had on World War II. So please jump onto my Discord and leave me suggestions of videos that we can watch together. All right, that was the video for today. I enjoyed it. If you did, please smash the like button, leave a comment, and remember to subscribe. That would really help me out. Cheers from down under. Take care. Bye.